Canadian rock musician Bryan Adams released his single "Cuts Like a Knife" in 1983. But the fact of the matter is, metal knives have been around for more than 4,000 years. In this week's episode, I'll share a knife I just bought, the knives that I own, and one that has special meaning. So join me as I talk about camp knives in this week's Camping Gear with the Yankee Camper.
Possibly the single most useful tool you can have for camping is a good knife. I own 3, plus my partner has one. To be fair, I don't use it every time I go camping, but I always have it with me. These are different than the blades on a multi-use tool. This is small and it works very well for what it's designed for. With a decent camp knife, you can cut rope or cut meat and vegetables. It'll shave wood to get a fire going, and you can use it to open blister packs. Actually, that function alone may be worth it to have one if you've got a new piece of gear. Let me show you the knives I have with me. I have 3 folding lockback knives, and a solid blade. I'm going to start with the solid knife. In the 1800s, the knife used by Jim Bowie gained popularity. It was big and lethal. Designed for the rugged outdoors, these blades could be seen hanging from the belts of pioneers, mountain men, trappers, and Native Americans. As the need for a large hunting knife was replaced with combat in World War I, the trench knife gained popularity, but it was hefty with close-quarter fighting in mind. So the Bowie knife lost some heft, but still remained a large blade. As the world was plunged into a Second World War, the U.S. Marines were looking for a replacement for the trench knife, and the Union Cutlery Company out of New York answered the call with its K-bar. But it was still designed for combat. Meanwhile, in the basement of a Kansas church, Hoyt Buck was transforming old files into light, easier-to-handle blades for outdoor enthusiasts. By 1942, he had perfected his knife and introduced the Model 119 to the public. The popularity of these knives skyrocketed, and other manufacturers took notice. This is my dad's hunting knife from the 1950s. It's manufactured by the Utica Knife Company out of Utica, New York. It has its original sheath and the jackknife that was sold with it. It's a solid back blade and it works very well. I don't use this knife for 2 reasons. First, it's heavy on my belt. I've carried it a couple of times, but if I were to lose it, I would be devastated. And that's the second reason. It reminds me of my dad, and I use it occasionally, but not as my primary camping knife. I'll tell you about that in a moment, but first, let me tell you about this.
I decided to look for a New England manufactured full Tang camp knife for under $50 with a sheath. That's a tall order, and the list is quite limited, but not impossible. Allow me to present my Green River Works hunting fishing knife made by Dexter Russell out of Southbridge, Massachusetts. I bought it through Amazon for around $25, but I've seen it for as much as $10 less. It doesn't come with a sheath, and the manufacturer's sheath was more than the knife itself, and lacked a restraining strap. I found one for less than $10. This style has a long history dating back to around the 1840s. The development of the blade can be seen at the Workbench YouTube channel. I'll put a link to the video in the description. Briefly, John Russell started the company in 1834 to compete against the hunting knives being imported from Sheffield, England. American knives were more costly to manufacture and therefore required a higher price tag. Within 3 years, both America and England were struggling in the Panic of 1837. Russell was able to hold on to his business through Yankee determination and grit, but by 1840, Sheffield had recovered and began to flood the market with inexpensive cutlery due to improved manufacturing techniques. As luck would have it, Matthew Chapman, a native of Scotland who had worked in Sheffield, came to Russell's attention and was brought to the Green River Works to institute improvements in the manufacturing process. These cost-cutting measures also improved the quality of the knives, allowing the blades to be sold at a competitive price. The Green River hunting knife proved that American cutlery was equal to that of Britain's Steel City and was dubbed the knife that won the West, with the company producing around 60,000 knives per year from 1840 to 1860. That's more than one Green River knife for every 2 people who moved west during that period, and shows just how popular this particular knife was. After almost 100 years, however, American competition took its toll on the Greenfield mass business and it merged with another Bay State knife manufacturer, the Harrington Cutlery Company. Henry Harrington started his business in Southbridge, Mass., focusing on shoe knives and surgical equipment in 1818, the first cutlery manufacturer in America. Shoes were an integral part of the New England economy in the 1800s. Harrington then expanded to firearms. During the latter part of the 1800s, he used his son's name, Dexter, as a trademark, as he expanded his cutlery into chef knives and professional blades. As mentioned, the Harrington Cutlery Company rescued Green River in the 1930s and, after heavy rains swelled the river and devastated the Greenfield facility, all production was moved to Southbridge. In 1969, another Southbridge company, Hyde Manufacturing, known for making drywall joint knives, acquired Russell Harrington. Isaac P. Hyde had started as an apprentice with the Harrington Company in 1847. By 1875, he had opened his own business. During the early 20th century, the company had shifted from shoemaking blades to knives designed for use in the Connecticut and southwestern Massachusetts tobacco fields. By 1921, these were modified for use in trimming wallpaper, which led to their introducing a flexible petty knife that, in turn, widened into a blade designed for use with joint compound. In 2023, the company introduced their series of wall application tools, including brushes and rolls. Hyde maintained the Russell Harrington name until it was modified in 2001 to the present Dexter Russell brand, known today. Now, you know.
I don't have any endorsements for making these videos, but there is a cost associated with things like campsite fees and supplies. This channel runs on coffee. If you enjoy the work that I do in creating these videos and would like to help out with expenses, please consider buying me a cup of coffee. It doesn't need to be much, just a couple of dollars. I'll put a link in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. Folding knives have been around for thousands of years. The biggest problem with them is having them collapse when trying to do any real work, creating a frustrating, sometimes dangerous situation. Although the mechanism on a lockback predates it, the Buck 110 introduced in 1964, popularized this feature. With rosewood handles and brass bolsters, this 4-inch blade with a clip point became very popular with both workmen and outdoor enthusiasts. Still made in America, the Buck 110 sets the bar by which all other lockbacks are measured. Back in the 80s, I owned a 110 FG, which means it's got finger grips. I'll share what happened to that in a moment. These knives carry some weight. Made to last, they're more blade than many wanted, so Buck introduced their 112 Ranger model. Similar in style to the 110, but just a little bit smaller, they're still fairly heavy for an everyday carry. In 1984, the company came out with their version of a slimmer offering, with thermoplastic handles, and based on the 112, they offered the 422. As you can see, this has the finger grips. This belongs to my partner. She uses it for gardening and chores around the house and the garage.
Well, it seems I've lost the video that I shot for my next knife. This one I asked for when I thought I'd teach myself to sail. Concerned with turtling the sailboat and getting caught underneath the lines, I was looking for a blade that could be operated with one hand. This is my Kershaw Bump. It has a speed-safe spring assist for opening designed by Ken Onion. I really like this a lot. The slim design and one-hand operation features Kershaw's stud lock mechanism, which keeps the blade in place, but can be a little clunky trying to close. Likewise, there's a small safety lock on the side which will prevent the blade from opening accidentally. Part of me feels that the lock is a good idea, but it defeats the key feature on this blade, the speed-safe opening. This works pretty well as an everyday carry blade, but for camping, you might want to consider something a little more rugged.
I've had this knife for just about 35 years. It's my Schrade Uncle Henry Bear Paw LB7. Like the Buck 110, it's got a clip point blade and brass bolsters. The handle is some type of man-made material designed to look like stag antlers. This is the old-timer model. I've owned this knife since I lost my 110 FG back out in the woods cutting Christmas trees one year. What persuaded me to go with the Uncle Henry was that if you lost your knife within the first year after purchase, they would replace it for free. Obviously, I still have it more than 30 years later, but this is my preferred camping blade. You can still get one. They run about $35 for the regular model. And although they're no longer made in the USA, I understand they're a decent tool. If I needed to replace it though, I'd probably go back to my Buck 110 FG. I'll talk about sharpening in just a moment, but first, let me share this.
When I worked in Boston some 40 years ago, I was just a few blocks from downtown Crossing and would often spend my lunch hour browsing. There was Woolworth's on the corner, Filene's Basement with their incredible bargains, Bromfield Street with Jack's Joke Shop featuring all their novelty items, along with camera stores on one side and Sherman's Discount in the Massachusetts Bible Society on the other. If you were looking for things that cut, however, you went one block over to Temple Place and visited Stoddard's Fine Cutlery. This store had all kinds of sharp, pointy things, including high-end chef knives, carving blades, hunting and fishing knives, and a grand assortment of Swiss Army knives. I only ventured in a few times, because I didn't want them to have to clean up the drool after I left. This was a Boston institution. Having opened in 1800, it was the oldest cutlery shop in the city, although it had changed names a few times. Originally located at the corner of Washington and Bromfield Streets, and, although it was sold over the years, it never closed. Take a walk with me, if you will, through the fascinating history of this once New England icon. The first owner, Samuel Bradley, sold cutlery and hardware. When he sold the business in 1845, the new owner, Martin Bradford, added fishing tackle, including rods and reels, to his offerings. 22 years later, Bradford partnered with Nathan Anthony to form a well-respected rod and reel supplier known as Bradford and Anthony. Well, they didn't manufacture their own reels, they did make their own rods and flies. By the third quarter of the 19th century, B&A was one of the largest retailers of fishing tackle. In 1883, longtime employee Warren Dame partnered with Oliver Hazard Perry Stoddard and Ralph M. Kendall to purchase the business. While still focusing on fishing, they also catered to all outdoor sportsmen with the continued sales of specialty knives, including the hunting styles, such as those manufactured by another Massachusetts cutlery maker, R. Murphy Knives, which had started in Boston but had moved to Harvard, Mass. Around 1884, then to Ayer around 1906. In 2018, the Murphy Company was acquired by Dexter Russell. Getting back to DS&K, in 1909 the name of Kendall was gone, and soon after Stoddard was trademarked as a brand name. In a newspaper article from around 2011, David Marks, third-generation owner of Stoddard's, claimed his family bought the company in the late 1920s. It then shifted its primary focus back to cutlery, however still carried some locally tied fishing flies. In the mid-1960s, the business relocated from its 160-year-old building on Washington Street around the corner to Temple Place, which is where I visited them. In the 1990s, it relocated to Copley Place in Boston's Back Bay, and then moved again to the Chestnut Hill Mall near Boston College in the early 2000s. The Temple Place location became a pub using Stoddard's name. Like all good things, it came to an end after a final move to the Nonantum section of Newton, Massachusetts, where it had a small area in the Colonial Drug Store, a former Harvard Square icon known for catering to shaving. By 2018, it was gone after 11 scores of selling the best knives. As for the pub by the same name, it fell victim to the 2020 coronavirus. Now you know.
Keeping your knife sharp is one of the things I've struggled with. I've used stones like this, both dry and wet, but I was always concerned about ruining my blade. Victorinox, the makers of the Swiss Army knife, have created a knife sharpener that's almost foolproof. The top has a V-groove with the exact angle for sharpening your edge. Simply open your blade and place it on a flat surface, holding the sharpener perpendicular to the blade. Just pull across a number of times until you feel no resistance. That will take out any of the burrs and the rolls in your blade edge. And then remove the other end and you've got a stone for honing. Draw the blade across for a nice smooth, clean edge. I prefer to stroke in opposite directions, but you can absolutely go down one side and the other until you've honed that edge to the sharpness you feel comfortable with. I hope you found this video useful and informative. If you have, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and it lets YouTube know that you're interested in the content that I'm putting out. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. I try to put out a video every week on camping, either the camping gear that I use, like these knives, or campgrounds around the New England area, primarily state and national parks. And in my Making a Mess series, I create recipes using shelf-stable food in my mess kit. Until next time, get outside, and thank you for watching.